Hi, this is Koiro with a short video, just an introduction to the Commodore 1802 kind of monitor, and there actually are quite a lot of them. I will take a walkthrough of the different models later on. But first, this is a monitor that I got from a friend. It's not mine. I only want to recap it and send it back. And normally I don't do totally recaps, but on this monitor there has been a lot of reported capacitor faults, and all the capacitors in this chassis is made by the manufacturer themselves, Daewoo, and I have no experience with their capacitors from earlier designs and so on. I've never taken on an 1802 of this exact design. I have done some repairs on the oldest model later. It's back in the 80s. So this will be at least, I think, a 2-part series. Maybe it will be 3 parts, because I didn't have all the capacitors I needed on the first try. So I will start by showing you the monitor, showing you the different models. Then I will take you through just a short brief on the recapping itself, and then we will do some testing and maybe some adjusting of this monitor afterwards if we are able to make it work. Yes, first off, as an introduction to just the model we are looking at, someone at the mocac.org or something has been kind enough to scan the brochure for this 1802 monitor, and they say that this is a high quality, high resolution monitor that maximizes the video capabilities of Commodore computers. And they also state that there is a 40 column and an 80 column monochrome mode, but this machine is this monitor is mentioned to be compatible with these computers, and it's the Commodore 64, 64C, SX64 and the C128. But we do have to remember that the 128 needs an RGB output to be able to display 80 characters, maybe in monochrome. We can do some mix-up, but this is not the ideal monitor for a Commodore 128. And this is the American version with 120 volt. As we are situated in Norway in Europe, we have to use the 240 or 220 volt version. And this monitor looks quite nice, and it does have the white creamy color of the C64C and 128. But I always go to the gonamactar.hu webpage to look at Commodore monitor. They have the complete lineup of about everything. And you saw me use this webpage when I did the 1084 video earlier on. And here they have listed all the 1802 monitors. And you can see here, this is the old original one. I don't remember if it was this one or this one that was the original that I saw first. It's not much difference on them. I think it's just the plastic on the chassis. And if you see here, you can see who has made this monitor, and all these versions was made by Gold Star, and this I have done some repairs on. And this was a monitor that was sold in Norway in the early 80s. And then came the 1802 tall version. That was the first version made by the Korean manufacturer Daewoo, and this is the monitor we actually are going to look into. And you can see that they overlap by some years. This was made in 1994 and this was 1986, and the same with the Daewoo chassis that we have. And they also made some changes to this later on, not on the inputs or capabilities of the monitor. They was just cosmetic changes as far as I know. Maybe there are some changes on the PCB, and maybe there are not, because all this was made by Daewoo. And I only find one schematic of this online, and this is actually listed here in this. You can have the user's manual. It's downloadable from here, and you can have the service manual downloadable for here. And they also state some repair facts that you can use an Orion picture tube, and you also has a replacement flyback transformer description here. But you also have a capacitor list, and I used this list to order the capacitors for this monitor, and the vendor made one mistake and I made one mistake, and I also omitted to order some of the caps that I already had in stock, but then I of course used this stock to fix something else in between, so that's why I'm missing some capacitors to finish this. And you can also see that they have made some cosmetic changes on this as late as 1992, but that's a questionable remark. And here you also have the 19 series of monitors that also was capable of RGB in addition to composite video to make it fully work on a Commodore 128. Let's dive into the capacitor list first. Oh, Commodore. I have to fix that. And they have made a list, and this list is based on the schematics, and they advise us that you can use higher voltage caps. Of course you can, but there might be some difference in resonance frequency and so on. And they also say that you don't use lower voltage caps or different microfarad rating. Of course that's a given. In general, if you want your monitor to last, replace all the capacitors. Generally, I don't agree on that, but for this case, let's do it. And only use quality Japanese capacitors for companies like Rubicon, Nichicon, Nippon, Chemicon, Matsuhita, Panasonic, etc. And that's generally a good advice. These are also the most copied capacitors. So if you're buying capacitors from the internet, it might be better to look at European manufacturers like Wurt and others, because they are less prone to be Chinese copies. But I normally buy capacitors for this from Moser, Distrelec, or some of the other quality vendors that you have here, are able to order from here in Norway. And as we can see, there are some faults on. And when I say fault, I don't mean faults on the capacitor list. Here they have done an excellent job, but this is statements of faults on in the service manual and markings on the PCB itself. The C311, it's marked on top of the board with 312, on the bottom with C311. And this C325 is not marked on the top, but on the bottom of the PCB. And this one, I don't even know what the designation are. I had to measure out this because this capacitor fell out when I desoldered it to locate it on the right polarity. They say that the plus leg has a connection to pin 2 of a controller IC, and the minus is connected to inductor on the board. And the 612 is top incorrectly marked as 605. The C814 is incorrectly marked as R814. And these are all the electrolytic caps on the board. In addition to these, there are some old tantalum capacitors that also can be prone to failure on this board. So maybe these should be changed too. At least they tend to explode, so it's easy to find them if they break. But at least we are going to change everything of these before we do something else on this monitor. And dealing with old monitors, it's of course best to have a complete schematic so you can see for yourself the issues at hand. And normally these service guides do have some repair guides and troubleshooting charts and so on. And this is the September 1986 service manual, and it is for the original monitor. It's not the worst service manual I've seen for a CRT, and it gives some good tips and so on. But the copy I got of this is a really bad photocopy, and this is of course what happened in the 80s when the copiers was not able to make color copies, and they didn't make as many gray tones as you would like to get a really good copy. But they have some general idea of the layout of the monitor. and they tell you how to remove the chassis, and here you can see that the contrast on this copier is very bad. And they also tell you that it's wise to limit the temperature on your soldering iron for not breaking the PCB. And on this PCB, this is a very good advice, because this PCB has a very low quality and the pads are easily lifted from the board. And they give you a troubleshooting guide if you don't have a picture and so on. And you can see here all the guides for back in the 80s. They didn't participate. They didn't foresee that the capacitors would go bad. So it's almost everything that you can see here is the components that's breaking when you normally do the service, and based on their experience. And it's resistors. There is a lot of ICs and active components like diodes and transistors that they say go bad, but not a single capacitor is mentioned here. But this guide we are certainly going to use if we can't get a good picture when we have finished doing our capacitor replacement. And then you have the adjustment of the monitor, and this is also a good documented process. And this is of course the same on almost every CRT, at least from the same vendor. And they also give you some more information about the input signals. They have the board layout. This is on the neck PC board, and this is the board that's on the neck of the picture tube. And this is the bottom panel, and here we could really have used a better copy. And there also are some differences here between the 220 and 120 volt that, it might be important and it might not be important. And they also give you the view from the component side and the same from the bottom view, solder side, so that you can be able to see the traces. And even though it's quite low contrast, you can actually follow the traces on the PCB on this. And the same with the circuit diagram. It's a bit overexposed when it comes to the different connections, but there are some markings made on these schematics, and that's often valuable information. The components themselves are, they are marked. Some of this is readable, some is not as readable as I should wish they were. So if anyone has a better scan of this, it would be nice to have it uploaded somewhere. I have not been able to find it. And this is some measurements that they have noticed around the control IC. So maybe this is values that's made when it's proper adjusted, or maybe this was some part of a fault finding process. It's difficult to know. And the block diagram, this is almost the same on every CRT, at least for when you don't have a TV tuner. You start here with the video input. And that's it. That's the whole service manual. And I do think it will be enough to make this work. But we might have some, digging in and some more exploration to do because of the bad quality of some of the scans in this manual. But let's go down in the shed and start to see on the actual monitor we have at hand. It's time for something different. It's some time ago that I took on a Commodore monitor, and this is a monitor that belongs to a fellow Commodore collector, and it is a Commodore 1802, and the 1802 is found in different variants, but this is one of the earlier Commodore monitor that's meant to be used with the Commodore 64 line of computers. And it also has V-hold, H position, V height, as adjustable from the front with the screwdriver, and it also has contrast, brightness and color. And you can also take this switch to see if it's composite or it's separate chroma luma or mono. And there also is a volume button, so there is a built-in speaker in this monitor. And this monitor does not work, and the person who owns it has opened it and confirmed that there are some bad capacitors in here. We will try to be very careful with this door. In fact, I'm going to remove it because this peg here is broken, but the door itself is present and is in good condition, although it's very yellowed. And there are some butts and cracks on the, not cracks, but yeah, some dents and some marks on the chassis, but nothing much. It's a bit yellowed and you can see that it's been used. There are some marks for storage and some other stuff. The unit has this carrying handle on top, and yeah, it needs a good cleaning. But cleaning is not what we do on this channel. We make things work and then we send it away to the beauty parlor afterwards. Yeah, so I will start with dismantling the back of this monitor to see how we further go along to take out any stuff. And you can see the screen itself is hiding beneath this bezel, so it's totally safe to put this on the side like so. And here we can see that in this series that starts with 5 million, so this is a quite early screen, 626, and it's made in December 1986. And on the back here you have the inputs, you have the video, you have audio, you have the Luma, Chroma and audio 2. It's probably because this is in sync, so you can have different audio sources, and you also have just monochrome input for video. Normal, you don't need a separate input, but that means that you can have 3 sources connected to this monitor at once and just select with the switch on the front. As I said, this monitor has been opened before, so these screws comes out quite easily, and they're just a very coarse plastic screw like this. And there should be 2 more on the top, but those are probably, yeah, those are hidden up here. Might be able to take them out, but I do think that this plastic just slides. Okay, the board is in the plastic. I have to take another approach to this to not destroy anything. I do have to make sure that this monitor stands on its own when I tip it like this. This is not very good video, I know, because I need to get a totally different camera solution. I could have fastened the camera on top of a tripod and placed it behind the monitor, but even though it will be a very narrow space to film this, and I also need to stick my hands in to be able to unplug some of the cables so that we can get these 2 parts disconnected from each other. And first I take the high voltage prong out, and this monitor has not been turned on for a very long time, so there should be no danger in this. That was the shortest line, and I do think that this tube stands on its own feet, so I just need to disconnect some more of the cables that goes to the end of the tube here. And these are all fitted on connectors, I think. Let's see, I do have some more high power lines that goes into this, but this will not be very good filming anyway, so I'm not sure how I will go on about this. I will try to remove the back door first. I do think that this is the sliding mechanism for the printed circuit board. It was keep this back, yeah, like this, and there was one screw there, and I have the other one secured here. And we do kind of see what's going on here, and this kind of stands sturdy, so I think this will be okay to work on. I will change the camera line angle a bit so that we can get a bit more close-up, I think. And look at this shady bunch. This is all Daewoo caps, and all the caps in this chassis is Daewoo. And I don't know what quality they have, but they do seem to be okay. And I have measured a few of them, and they measure out somewhat alright, but some of them are a bit shady. The power line is soldered to the board, but the power switch is not. And there also are some for the power LED. It's there, and yeah, and there still are a lot of cables left, and I will try to loosen up every one of them that I can to free the board, so it will be easy to solder. I do mark this that goes into the power connector. And the power LEDs, just like so. And I do have a speaker connector down here. And then we have the feed up here to the high voltage. It goes like so. And yeah, this goes like so. And I do think we will be able to do most of the things that we need to do on this board. Yeah, without any further dismantling of this. And what was the alarm is that there are some marks on this, some corrosion marks. There are some capacitors and stuff. We do have this potentiometers, and everything is kind of, yeah, I don't know what to say. It's just slightly corroded, and you have this white stuff over some of the capacitors and some of the other stuff. And then you also have the capacitors here. They've corroded on top, and you can actually see that this is been sitting in some moist environment. And that does not necessarily mean that all the caps are bad, but these monitors do prone to have bad caps, so we are going to swap out some of them, and at least take the ones that's close to the high voltage and to the power supply. And I do think at least a complete set of capacitors for this board. If I put this screwdriver in like so, I will have some more security that this does not fall over in an easy fashion. Yeah, I might have to release the power cable as well. That's not a big deal. This has the fixed power cord. It's no plug on the back. And if you see on the print itself, you actually can see here along the top, you can see here along the top that you do have some corrosion here where there have been contact with the plastic and where this has been slid in. And there are some marks from solder and so on, but I don't think that means that this board has been serviced or anything. I do think that this is mostly due to the heavy components, and the components that's through hole and sockets and stuff have been hand soldered afterwards. So of course I do want to clean this away, because I don't want to have this on my hands when I work on this. There might be some points here where we have to resolder stuff, but the first thing we will do is actually to start to swap out some of the capacitors, and we take the ones that's most prone to fail first. To clean this, I can use this deoxidation spray. The oxidation spray like this is probably mostly isopropanol anyway. You see here where there has been sitting this corrosion for a while, the solder mask is actually starting to crack. Yeah, just doing a manual visual inspection of the rest of the PCB and taking off the neck PCB to see if there is any issues with anything else, and if there are some other issues on this board that we haven't noticed so far. And this monitor had been sitting for a long time before I took this out, so I do know that this was without power. And we also have some of these caps down here. This is a bit difficult to see, but there are some glue here, but then there has been some decoagulation of the glue, and that could possibly mean that this capacitor has been leaking. Yeah, I do think we just got going on this. There has to be just some caps at a time, so we now make sure that they are replaced with the correct value. And this is the caps that we are going to replace most of this stuff with. It's caps from Wurt, it's caps from Panasonic, it's some Kemet caps and so on, but everything of this is ordered from Moser, and I do believe most of them are quite high quality. At least it's something that's able to withstand some heat. I forgot to turn on the gun here. There are markings on both sides of the board, so it should not be very difficult to find the right soldering pads. Okay, I'm not sure if this one actually has leaked or not, but at least the glue that was keeping this in place has seen better days. Yes, and this is 470 microfarad, 35 volts, and this is a Daewoo capacitor, and as this is a Daewoo chassis, probably everything is Daewoo that can be Daewoo. I should sort these caps after size, so it will be easier to find them. And these are the ones I will be replacing it with. And this is a 105-degree part. This is unmarked, so it's probably 85. And when replacing caps, it's very important to remember what is minus and what is plus. And this is very good marked on these PCB if you know the symbol. And the biggest part, that is to symbolize the can of the capacitor, is the minus. And the small one is the anode, and that's the plus sign. And every capacitor except 2 or 3 is marked this way on this board. But there are some faults, as we explained earlier. Yeah, that's one down. C324. Oh, it just fell out. Yes, here it was. And this is 220 microfarads and 35 volts. And this is actually a good place to cut this video, because in the list this C324 is actually marked as 25 volts. So I have ordered 25 volt and not 35 volt capacitor for this. So either is a typo in the list, or someone has used a 35 volt capacitor, or this is a change in a later version of the schematic that is need to be 35 volt. So I need to do some investigating before we can continue anyway. Yeah, as always, I said short episode, but it's, as normal, taking more than half an hour. But we have to continue this on a later stage. I have ordered the capacitors that I'm missing, and I do have good hope that we will be able to start this monitor. I forgot to mention it, but the way I remember it, it worked when the owner first plugged it in, and then it didn't work again. So we do have to find out if there is more fault than the capacitors on this monitor. But that will have to be for another day. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the content. If you want to be notified when we post new videos, please subscribe. If it also help out the channel a lot. If we reach the 1000 subscriber mark, our videos will be featured in more streams and ads from Google, and that's a good thing to spread the channel and make more viewers. So, thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.